Marcus Thompson had everything money could buy, but nothing could prepare him for what his son would find in Central Park that October morning. What started as a simple family walk would become the most dangerous decision of his life, but no one imagined what would come next. On a perfect autumn day in Central Park, Billionaire CEO Marcus Thompson's life changed forever when his 8-year-old son introduced him to a homeless little girl crying by a bench. 6-year-old Emma had been surviving on the street since her mother's tragic death, hiding from foster care workers who didn't know her incredible secret. Against his wife's desperate pleas and his lawyer's warnings, Marcus made the shocking decision to adopt Emma immediately, not knowing she possessed a photographic memory containing her deceased mother's research on a revolutionary medical breakthrough. As Emma slowly revealed fragments of her mother's hidden work, Marcus realized this wasn't just about saving a child. It was about a discovery that could save millions of lives. But powerful pharmaceutical companies would kill to bury this secret, and soon Marcus discovered that Emma's mother's accident was actually murder. Now, with assassins closing in and his own family in danger, Marcus must choose between protecting his empire and protecting the little girl who holds the key to changing the world. The ultimate question becomes, how far would you go to save a child who could save humanity? Before we dive into this incredible true story, then please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. Would you risk everything for a stranger's child? The autumn leaves crunched beneath Marcus Thompson's Italian leather shoes as he walked through Central Park with his wife Catherine and their 8-year-old son Jake. At 42, Marcus had built Thompson Industries into a $15 billion pharmaceutical empire, but today he was just a father enjoying a rare Sunday morning with his family. The October sun filtered through the golden maples, casting dancing shadows on the path ahead. "Dad, can we go to the playground?" Jake asked, his blonde hair catching the light as he skipped ahead of his parents. "Of course, buddy," Marcus replied, checking his Rolex. Even on weekends he was mentally calculating time, always aware of the next board meeting, the next acquisition, the next breakthrough that would cement his legacy in the medical world. Catherine squeezed his arm gently. "Try to stay present, Marcus. No work thoughts today, remember?" At 38, she was still as beautiful as the day he'd met her at Harvard Business School, her auburn hair perfectly styled even for a casual park stroll. They'd been married for 12 years, and she knew him too well. Marcus smiled and put his arm around her waist. "You're right. Today is just about us." As they approached the playground, Jake suddenly broke into a run toward the swings. Marcus and Catherine followed at a leisurely pace, enjoying the crisp air and the sound of children's laughter echoing through the park. Other families were scattered around the area, some pushing strollers, others sitting on benches watching their children play. "Mr. Thompson?" a voice called from behind them. Marcus turned to see David Chen, his head of security, approaching with quick steps. David's usually calm demeanor seemed slightly tense, which immediately put Marcus on alert. "David, I told you no work today," Marcus said. But his tone was more curious than annoyed. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's been a development with the Patterson merger. They're threatening to pull out if we don't respond by tomorrow morning." Catherine sighed audibly. "Marcus, you promised." But before Marcus could respond, Jake came running back toward them, his face flushed with excitement. Dad, you have to meet my new friend. She's really cool, but she seems sad." Marcus looked between his son's eager face and David's urgent expression. The eternal struggle between family and business was playing out in real time, as it had so many times before. "Where is this friend, Jake?" Catherine asked, kneeling down to her son's level. "Over by the big oak tree near the pond. She's sitting all by herself. I tried to cheer her up, but she just keeps crying. I think she needs help." Marcus felt something stir in his chest, a protective instinct that went beyond his usual business calculations. David, can this wait an hour? Sir, I really think 1 hour, Marcus said firmly. Jake, show us to your friend. As they walked toward the pond, Marcus noticed fewer families in this section of the park. The area was quieter, more secluded, with tall trees creating natural barriers between the walking paths and the playground. Something about the isolation made him uneasy, though he couldn't pinpoint why. There she is. Jake pointed toward a massive oak tree whose branches created a canopy over a worn wooden bench. Marcus stopped short when he saw her. A small girl, no more than 6 years old, was curled up on the bench with her knees drawn to her chest. Her long, dark hair hung in tangled waves around her face, partially obscuring her features. Her clothes, a faded pink dress and torn sneakers, looked like they hadn't been changed in days. "Oh my God," Catherine whispered, instinctively moving forward. But Marcus caught her arm gently. Something about the scene felt wrong. Where were her parents? Why was she alone? And why did she look so? The little girl suddenly looked up at their approach, and Marcus felt his breath catch. Her eyes were the most striking shade of green he'd ever seen, but they held a depth of sadness that no child should ever possess. Tears had carved clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "Hi," Jake said softly, approaching her with the fearless compassion that only children possess. "These are my mum and dad. They wanted to meet you." The girl's eyes darted between the three adults, and Marcus could see the fear there, but also a glimmer of hope that broke his heart. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Catherine asked gently. Sitting down on the bench beside her, the girl looked at Catherine for a long moment before whispering, "Emma." "That's a beautiful name," Catherine said. "Emma, where are your parents?" And that's when Emma said the words that would change everything. "My mommy died last week." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he watched this tiny girl try to be brave, while her world had clearly collapsed around her. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, and even Jake seemed to understand the gravity of what Emma had just revealed. "Oh, honey," Catherine breathed, reaching out slowly to touch Emma's shoulder. The little girl didn't pull away, which somehow made the moment even more heartbreaking. Marcus knelt down in front of the bench, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. Up close, he could see that she was thinner than she should be, her cheeks slightly hollow. "Emma, where have you been staying since your mom?" "Different places," Emma said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes under the bridge by the river, sometimes in the subway tunnels when it gets cold. Yesterday I slept here in the park." "Jesus Christ," Marcus muttered under his breath. A 6-year-old girl had been surviving on the streets of New York for a week. How was that even possible? "What about your daddy?" Jake asked, sitting down on the other side of Emma with the casual acceptance that children have. Emma shook her head. "I don't have a daddy. Mommy said he went away before I was born." Marcus felt something burning in his chest, a mixture of rage and heartbreak that he'd never experienced before. His own son had never known a moment of uncertainty about where his next meal would come from, or where he'd sleep that night. The contrast was staggering. "Emma," Catherine said gently, "haven't any grown-ups tried to help you? Police officers? Social workers?" Emma's eyes grew wide with fear. "Mommy always told me to hide from them. She said they would take me away and put me with people who don't understand. She made me promise." "Understand what, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, though something told him this answer would be important. Emma looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she said, "Mommy said I remember things differently than other people. She said it was special, but that other people might think it was weird." Before Marcus could ask what she meant, David Chen approached their group. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Patterson people are getting impatient. They're threatening to go with Henderson Pharmaceuticals instead. Marcus looked up sharply. The Patterson merger was worth $3 billion and would give Thompson Industries access to revolutionary cancer research. It was the kind of deal that came along once in a decade. But then he looked back at Emma, who had shrunk back against the bench at the appearance of another strange adult. Her fear was palpable, and Marcus realized that in her short life, most adults had probably been sources of danger rather than safety. "David, I need you to make some calls," Marcus said, standing up, "but not about Patterson. Sir, I need you to contact Dr. Sarah Mitchell. You remember her, the child psychologist who consulted on our employee wellness program. Tell her it's urgent. I also need you to reach out to our legal team and find out everything you can about emergency guardianship laws in New York State." Catherine looked at him with surprise. "Marcus, what are you thinking?" But before he could answer, Emma tugged on his sleeve. When he looked down, she was holding something out to him, a small, worn notebook with a faded blue cover. "This was my mommy's," she said. "She always wrote in it, especially at night when she thought I was sleeping. She said it was important, but I can't read all the big words." Marcus took the notebook carefully, as if it were made of glass. The cover was soft with wear, and several pages were dog-eared. As he opened it, he could see dense handwriting in black ink, scientific formulas, chemical diagrams, and notes that looked incredibly complex. "Emma," he said carefully, "what was your mummy's job?" "She was really smart," Emma said with the first hint of pride he'd heard in her voice. "She worked with medicines, trying to help sick people, but she said her bosses didn't like her ideas, so she had to work by herself." Marcus flipped through a few more pages of the notebook, his excitement growing. Even with his extensive background in pharmaceuticals, he could see that this was serious research, potentially groundbreaking research. Chemical compounds he didn't recognize, molecular structures that looked revolutionary. "Marcus," Catherine said quietly, "we need to call social services. This little girl needs proper care." "No," Emma said suddenly, tears starting fresh. "Please don't call them. Mommy made me promise to hide. She said if the wrong people found her work, bad things would happen." Marcus looked at his wife, then at David, then at his son who was holding Emma's hand with simple, pure compassion. A decision was crystallizing in his mind. A decision that went against every logical, rational thought he'd ever had. "Emma," he said gently, "how would you feel about coming home with us?" Catherine's eyes widened in shock. "Marcus, we can't just—" "Why not?" Marcus asked, though he kept his voice gentle for Emma's sake. "Look at her, Catherine. She's been surviving on the streets for a week. She's hungry, scared, and alone. What kind of people would we be if we just walked away?" David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Sir, there are legal procedures for this kind of situation. You can't just take custody of a child without going through the proper channels." Marcus looked down at Emma, who was watching the adult conversation with the intense attention of a child who had learned that grown-up decisions determined her survival. Her green eyes held a mixture of hope and terror that made his chest ache. "Emma," he said, crouching down again, "would you like to come to our house, just for tonight, while we figure out how to help you properly?" Emma looked at Jake, who nodded enthusiastically. "My room has bunk beds, and we have the best cook. Mrs. Rodriguez makes the most amazing chocolate chip cookies." A tiny smile flickered across Emma's face, the first one Marcus had seen. "I like cookies." "It's settled then," Marcus said, standing up with new determination. "David, I need you to make those calls I mentioned. Catherine, we should stop by a store and get Emma some clothes and toiletries." "Marcus," Catherine said, pulling him aside, while Jake and Emma compared favorite colors, "I admire what you want to do, but we have to think this through. We don't know anything about this child's background, her medical history, her psychological state after what she's been through." Marcus understood his wife's concerns. They were the same rational, responsible thoughts he would have had in any other situation. But something about Emma had triggered a protective instinct in him that overrode logic. "You're right," he said. "That's why I want Dr. Mitchell to see her as soon as possible. But Catherine, we can't leave her here. Look at her." They both turned to watch Emma, who was showing Jake how to make a flower chain from the fallen maple leaves. Despite her circumstances, she was being gentle and patient with his son, teaching him with the kind of careful attention that suggested she was used to taking care of others. "She's been taking care of herself for a week," Marcus continued. "A 6-year-old girl, surviving in one of the toughest cities in the world. That takes incredible strength and intelligence. And that notebook," he held up the worn journal. "Catherine, I think her mother was working on something important, something that could change everything." Catherine sighed, and Marcus could see her maternal instincts warring with her practical nature. What if her mother's family comes forward? What if there are relatives looking for her? "Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Marcus said. "But right now, today, she needs help, and we're in a position to give it." David approached them again, his phone in hand. "Sir, I've reached out to Dr. Mitchell. She can see Emma tomorrow morning. I also spoke with Jim Morrison in legal. He says emergency guardianship is possible, but it requires a court hearing and social services involvement." "Schedule the hearing for as soon as possible," Marcus said. "And David, I want you to do some research on Emma's mother, discreetly. Find out who she was, where she worked, what happened to her." "Already on it, sir." Marcus looked back at Emma, who was now laughing at something Jake had said. The sound was like music, pure and innocent and completely at odds with the tragedy she'd endured. "Emma," he called gently, "are you ready to go see our house?" She looked up at him with those remarkable green eyes, and he could see her making a decision. Finally, she nodded. As they walked back toward the park entrance, Marcus felt Catherine slip her hand into his. "You know this changes everything," she said quietly. "I know. Our routine, our privacy, our plans, everything. I know," Marcus repeated. "And you're okay with that?" Marcus looked ahead at Jake, who was chattering excitedly to Emma about his toy collection and his pet turtle. Emma was listening with the focused attention of someone starved for normal childhood experiences. "More than okay," he said. But as they reached their car, a black Mercedes S-Class that probably cost more than most people made in a year, Marcus saw Emma stop short. Her face went pale, and she took a step backward. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Catherine asked. "That's like the car that followed Mummy," Emma whispered, "before she died." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Emma, what do you mean?" But before she could answer, David's phone rang. He answered it quickly, his expression growing grave. "Sir," he said after hanging up, "we have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about you at the office. They want to know about your whereabouts today, and specifically, they're asking about any children you might have encountered." Marcus felt the pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. A puzzle he didn't understand yet, but one that suddenly felt very dangerous. "Get us home," he told David. "Fast." The drive to the Thompson estate was tense. Emma sat between Jake and Catherine, clutching the worn notebook. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror, still processing her words about the black car. "Emma, can you tell me more about the car that followed your mummy?" Emma's grip tightened. "It started a month ago. Mummy would look out the window and get scared. She said people were watching us because of her work. That's when she taught me to hide." "Hiding?" Catherine asked softly. "Under beds, in closets, at school? She taught me to be invisible when strangers came around. She said it was a game, but I could tell she was really scared." Marcus felt his blood run cold. A pharmaceutical researcher being followed, now dead, in what was probably not an accident. "Sir," David said quietly, Someone broke into our office building last night. 2 men accessed the research floors, avoiding cameras like professionals. What were they looking for? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. David glanced at Emma in the rear-view mirror meaningfully. As they pulled into the Thompson mansion's circular driveway, Emma's eyes grew wide. The Georgian-style house stood 3 stories tall, with manicured gardens and a fountain. "This is your house?" Emma whispered. "This is our house," Jake corrected generously. "And now it's your house too." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared as they entered the marble foyer. At 55, she had been with the Thompson family since Jake was born. She took one look at Emma and understood immediately. "Ay, mija, you look hungry. When did you last eat?" Emma thought for a moment. "Yesterday morning. I found some bread behind the bakery on 47th Street. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression darkened as she led Emma toward the kitchen. "David." "Conference room." "Now," Marcus said once Emma was settled. In his study, David opened his laptop and pulled up several files. "Sir, I've been digging into Emma's background. Her mother was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a biochemist who worked for Henderson Pharmaceuticals until 8 months ago." Marcus frowned. Henderson was Thompson Industries' biggest competitor. She was terminated for pursuing unauthorized research, memory enhancement compounds for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. Multi-billion-dollar market, sir. Marcus thought about Emma's notebook, full of complex formulas, and now she's dead. Car accident last Tuesday. But, sir, no skid marks, no signs she tried to brake. The other car left the scene immediately, was found burned out the next morning. No prints, no DNA. Someone killed her for her research. It gets worse. Several pharmaceutical companies have been approached by private contractors offering to acquire proprietary research through unconventional means. Corporate murder, sir. Marcus understood. Memory enhancement drugs could be worth hundreds of billions. There's more. Emma's mother kept a safety deposit box at First National Bank. It was broken into 3 days ago. Same night someone tried to access our research servers remotely. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. They think we have Dr. Vasquez's research, which means Emma isn't just an orphan child who needs help. She's potentially the key to the most valuable pharmaceutical research of the decade. And there are people who have already killed once to get it. From the kitchen came Emma's laughter, mixing with Jake's chatter. Innocent childhood joy. Unaware of the danger. "Double our security," Marcus said quietly. "And David, I want to know everything about Dr. Elena Vasquez's research." That evening, Emma settled into the guest room. Catherine and Mrs. Rodriguez had transformed into a child's bedroom. Marcus found himself in his study, staring at Dr. Vasquez's notebook. The formulas were incredibly complex, but he could begin to understand their revolutionary nature. Memory enhancement could eliminate Alzheimer's disease, help stroke victims recover lost memories, even enhance learning capabilities in healthy individuals. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Emma peered around the door, wearing pink pajamas with flowers. "Mr. Marcus, I can't sleep." "Come here, sweetheart," Marcus said, closing the notebook and patting the chair beside his desk. "Bad dreams?" Emma climbed into the oversized leather chair. "I keep thinking about Mommy, and I'm scared the bad people will find me here. Emma, I promise you're safe here. We have very good security." "That's what Mommy said too," Emma said quietly. "She promised we would always be together." The devastating truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child had lost the only person who loved her. "Emma, can you tell me about your special memory?" Emma looked at him for a long moment, deciding whether to trust him. "I remember everything, not just important things, everything. What people wear, conversations from when I was really little, books Mommy read to me when I was 3. "Everything?" Marcus asked softly. "Mommy called it photographic memory, but it's more. I can remember sounds and smells and feelings too. Sometimes it gets too much. Like my brain is too full. Marcus stared in amazement. A child with perfect recall whose mother did groundbreaking memory research. Do you remember your mommy's work? The things she wrote in her notebook? Emma nodded. She used to let me sit with her while she worked. She said I was her assistant because I could remember all her old experiments. She said I was better than any computer. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Do you remember the formulas? Some of them. She was really excited about something called MR47. She said it was going to change everything. David appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent. Sir, we have a problem. 2 cars parked across the street that weren't there an hour ago. At least 4 individuals conducting surveillance. Night vision equipment, coordinated positions. Marcus felt ice in his veins. How did they find us so quickly? Emma had gone pale. They found me, just like they found Mommy. Marcus knelt beside her chair. Emma, is there anything your mommy might have hidden? Anything besides the notebook? Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Mommy made me memorize something. She said if anything happened to her, I should tell someone I trusted. What did she make you memorize? Numbers, lots and lots of numbers. She said they were the key to everything. Marcus exchanged glances with David. If Emma had memorized the complete formulas. Sir, we need to move. Now. I've got a secure location. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the study in red light. Catherine's voice called out in fear from somewhere in the house. David was already moving, speaking rapidly into his phone. Alpha Team, report. What's our status? Emma had gone silent, trembling. Marcus lifted her into his arms. Emma, we're going to play your mummy's hiding game. She nodded against his shoulder. Sir, we've lost contact with perimeter security. Phone lines down, cell signals jammed. This is a military-level operation. From downstairs came the sound of breaking glass, multiple windows shattering simultaneously. They're inside, David whispered. Emma lifted her head, her green eyes wide but strangely calm. There's another way. I explored the house today. There's a dumbwaiter in the kitchen that goes to the 3rd floor. And there's a door in the 3rd floor bathroom that leads to the roof. Marcus stared at her. How could you possibly know that? I remember everything, and I learned to always know how to get out. Moving through the darkened house felt like navigating a deadly maze. Marcus carried Emma while David led the way, using hand signals to communicate. They could hear the intruders systematically searching the lower floors, their movements precise and coordinated. Catherine and Jake were waiting in the kitchen, both pale but trying to stay calm. Jake's eyes went wide when he saw Emma in his father's arms, but he didn't make a sound, even at 8 years old. He understood the gravity of the situation. The dumbwaiter, Marcus whispered to Catherine, pointing to the small service elevator built into the kitchen wall. It's our way out. Catherine looked at the narrow opening with skepticism. Marcus, we'll never all fit. Emma and Jake first, Marcus decided. Then you. David and I will find another way. But Emma shook her head firmly. No splitting up. That's how they got Mommy. They separated us. David checked his watch, then peered carefully through the kitchen window. Sir, we have maybe 2 minutes before they finish the 1st floor. Marcus made a decision that went against every protective instinct he had. Emma, you know this house better than any of us after just 1 day. Can you get Jake to safety? Emma nodded solemnly. The roof access leads to the neighbor's house. Mrs. Chen has a big oak tree that reaches her 2nd floor balcony. You remembered our neighbor's name after hearing it once? Catherine asked in amazement. I remember everything, Emma said again. But this time there was a weight to the words that made Marcus realize what a burden such a gift could be. As they prepared to boost the children into the dumbwaiter, Marcus heard footsteps on the stairs leading to the kitchen. David immediately positioned himself by the door, his hand moving to the weapon concealed under his jacket. "Change of plans," Marcus whispered urgently. "Catherine, take both kids through the dumbwaiter. I'll follow in 60 seconds." But as Catherine lifted Emma toward the opening, the little girl suddenly went rigid. "Wait!" she whispered, her voice filled with terror. "I know that voice downstairs. That's the man who killed my mommy." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. They weren't just dealing with corporate thieves. They were facing Emma's mother's actual murderer. And he had just found the one person who could identify him. The voice that drifted up from the first floor was calm, professional, with a slight accent that Emma's perfect memory had captured and preserved from the night her world ended. Marcus watched in horror as the 6-year-old girl's face went white with recognition and terror. "His name is Victor," Emma whispered, her small body trembling against Marcus's chest. "He came to our apartment 3 times before Mommy died. She always made me hide, but I could hear everything through the walls." David's expression hardened as he processed this information. A professional killer had been stalking Emma and her mother for weeks before finally making his move. Now he was in Marcus's house, hunting the only witness to his crime. "What did he want from your mommy?" Marcus asked quietly, even as his mind raced through escape options. "The formula for MR47, Emma said, but Mommy told him she destroyed it. She lied to protect me because she knew I had memorized everything." Catherine had gone completely still, Jake pressed against her side. Even at 8 years old, Jake seemed to understand that they were in mortal danger. The footsteps downstairs had stopped, which somehow felt more ominous than movement. "Sir," David breathed, "they're listening for us. They know we're up here." Marcus made a desperate calculation. The dumbwaiter could hold Catherine and both children, but it would take precious seconds to get them all through, seconds they might not have. "Emma," he whispered urgently, "I need you to tell me the most important parts of your mommy's formula, right now. In case we don't make it out of here." Emma's green eyes met his, and he saw a maturity there that no child should possess. She had learned to carry adult burdens, to make life and death decisions, to survive when the world wanted to destroy her. "MR47 isn't just memory enhancement," she said quietly. "It's memory transfer. Mommy found a way to take memories from one person and give them to someone else. She said it could help people with brain damage, but she also knew it could be used for terrible things." Marcus felt his breath catch. Memory transfer technology would be worth more than billions. It would fundamentally change human civilization. Governments, corporations, criminal organizations would kill thousands for such power. From downstairs came Victor's voice, speaking to someone else. "The child is here. I can smell the fear. Children always smell different when they're terrified." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a gasp. The casual cruelty in the man's voice was more frightening than any threat. David was already moving toward the dumbwaiter, gesturing for Catherine to lift Jake into the narrow opening. "We go now, or we don't go at all." But as Catherine reached for Jake, the kitchen door exploded inward. Victor stood in the doorway. A tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to catalogue everything in the room instantly. Behind him were 2 other men, both armed, both moving with the fluid precision of professional killers. "Dr. Thompson," Victor said, his accent giving the words a sinister melody. "I apologize for the dramatic entry, but your security made subtlety impossible." Marcus stepped protectively in front of his family, still holding Emma. "What do you want?" "I think you know," Victor replied, his gaze settling on Emma with predatory interest. "The child has something that belongs to my employers, something her mother stole before her unfortunate accident." "She's 6 years old," Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "What could she possibly have that's worth murdering for?" Victor smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than any scowl could have been. Dr. Elena Vasquez was brilliant, but she was also sentimental. She couldn't bear to destroy her life's work. So she did something very clever. She stored it in the one place she thought we'd never look. Emma's mind, Marcus realized with growing horror. Exactly. The child has perfect recall, and her mother spent months teaching her the complete MR47 formula, molecule by molecule, equation by equation. She turned her own daughter into a living database. Emma buried her face against Marcus's shoulder, but he could feel her listening to every word. Even in her terror, she was absorbing information, storing it in that incredible mind that had become both her greatest gift and her deadliest curse. The formula dies with the child, Victor continued conversationally, unless, of course, she shares it voluntarily. Children can be very cooperative when properly motivated. David had been slowly moving his hand toward his concealed weapon, but one of Victor's men was watching him carefully. Any sudden movement would trigger a firefight that none of them would survive. "What's your offer?" Marcus asked, though he already knew he would never surrender Emma to these monsters. "Simple. The child tells us what we need to know, and you all die quickly instead of slowly. I'm told I can be quite persuasive given sufficient time, but I prefer efficiency." Catherine made a small sound of distress, and Jake pressed closer to her side. Marcus realized that his son was seeing the worst of human nature, learning that there were people in the world who would kill children without hesitation. "There's a problem with your plan," Marcus said, stalling for time while his mind searched for any possibility of escape. "Oh?" Emma's mother was smarter than you think. She didn't just teach Emma the formula, she taught her how to destroy it. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Marcus was improvising desperately, but Emma suddenly lifted her head and looked at him with understanding. Her photographic memory had grasped what he was trying to do. "Mommy taught me the destabilization sequence," Emma said, her voice small but clear. "If I get too scared or if my heart beats too fast for too long, my brain automatically scrambles the formulas. It's like a self-destruct button in my memory." Victor studied her with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. "Fascinating. Dr. Vasquez programmed her own daughter with a psychological failsafe, which means," Marcus said, "that if you threaten her, you lose everything you came for." For the first time, Victor looked uncertain. Marcus could see him weighing options, calculating risks. A professional killer faced with a 6-year-old girl who had been turned into a biological data storage device with built-in security measures. "Unfortunately," Victor said finally, "I have orders. The formula must be retrieved regardless of the child's condition afterward." That's when Emma whispered something that changed everything, "But I'm not the only one who knows it." Victor's head snapped toward Emma with predatory focus. "What did you say?" Emma looked up at Marcus with those remarkable green eyes, and he could see her making a desperate gamble. "Mommy didn't just teach it to me. She taught it to someone else too, in case something happened to me." Marcus felt his heart racing as he realized Emma was buying them time with a lie. Or was it? With her perfect memory, she would know exactly what her mother had done in those final weeks. "You're lying," Victor said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Dr. Sarah Chen," Emma said, with the precise clarity that only truth could provide. "She works at Columbia Medical Center. Mommy went to see her 2 weeks before she died. I waited in the car, but I could see them through the window of her office. Mommy showed her the same notebook she showed me." Marcus felt a surge of hope. Dr. Sarah Chen was real. She was a renowned neurologist at Columbia, and if Elena Vasquez had shared her research with a colleague, it would explain why these killers hadn't simply eliminated Emma immediately. Victor pulled out his phone and spoke rapidly in what sounded like Russian. After a terse conversation, he hung up and studied Emma with new interest. "Dr. Chen is currently in surgery," he said. "She'll be unavailable for the next 6 hours, which gives us time to verify your story." "What does that mean for us?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "It means you're coming with us. All of you. If the child is lying, you'll watch your family die before she tells us the truth. If she's telling the truth, we'll need her to help us convince Dr. Chen to cooperate." David finally made his move, lunging toward his concealed weapon, but Victor's men were faster. The sound of the gunshot was deafening in the confined space of the kitchen. David crumpled to the floor, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "David!" Catherine screamed. "He'll live," Victor said callously, "if you cooperate. But let this be a demonstration of what happens when you test my patience." Jake was crying now, the sound breaking Marcus's heart. His son had never seen violence, never imagined that people could be so cruel. In one night, Jake's innocence was being shattered, along with everything else Marcus had built. "Please," Marcus said, "let my wife and son go. They don't know anything about the formula." "On the contrary," Victor replied, "they're the most valuable leverage I have. You'll do anything to protect them. And the child will do anything to protect them too. Family bonds are wonderfully predictable." Emma suddenly squirmed in Marcus's arms, wanting to be put down. When her feet touched the floor, she walked over to where David lay bleeding and knelt beside him. "Are you okay, Mr. David?" she asked softly. David managed a weak smile. "I've been better, little one." Emma looked up at Victor with a directness that seemed to surprise him. "You didn't have to hurt him. We were going to come with you anyway." "Were you?" Victor asked, genuinely curious about her response. "Mommy taught me that sometimes you have to go with bad people to protect good people. She said the most important thing is staying alive long enough to find help." Marcus realized that Emma was operating on a level of strategic thinking that most adults couldn't match. Her mother had prepared her for this exact scenario, teaching her survival skills disguised as games and lessons. "Smart woman, your mother," Victor said. "Too smart for her own good, ultimately." "She was the smartest person in the world," Emma said fiercely, and for a moment she sounded like any 6-year-old defending her parent. "And she said that smart people always win in the end, even when it looks like they're losing." Victor laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "We'll see about that." As his men prepared to move the family, Marcus caught Emma's eye. She gave him the slightest nod, and he realized she had a plan. Somehow this 6-year-old girl who had been surviving on the streets was still thinking 3 steps ahead of professional killers. "Where are we going?" Catherine asked, her voice shaky as she helped support David. "Somewhere private," Victor said. "Somewhere we won't be interrupted while we wait for Dr. Chen to become available." But as they were herded toward the front door, Emma suddenly stumbled and fell, crying out as she hit the marble floor. When Victor bent to pick her up, she was holding something in her small fist. "What's that?" he demanded. Emma opened her hand to reveal a small electronic device, David's emergency beacon that summoned backup security teams. "I pressed the button when I fell down," she said with innocent honesty. "Was I not supposed to do that?" Victor's face went pale as he realized what she'd done. In the distance, they could hear the sound of approaching sirens. "You clever little bitch," he snarled, raising his hand to strike her. But Marcus was faster, grabbing Victor's wrist with desperate strength. "Don't you dare touch her." The standoff lasted only seconds before Victor's radio crackled, with urgent voices reporting police units surrounding the property. "Change of plans," Victor said grimly. "We leave now, through the back, and if anyone makes a sound, the child dies first." As they were forced out into the cold October night, Marcus realized that Emma had just escalated their situation from kidnapping to a running battle with law enforcement in pursuit. She had gambled that the chaos would create opportunities for escape. looking at her small, determined face in the moonlight. Marcus realized he was seeing one of the most remarkable children who had ever lived. A 6-year-old girl with perfect memory, strategic thinking, and the kind of courage that most adults never developed. But courage wouldn't stop bullets, and Victor was no longer playing games. The autumn air bit through Marcus's shirt as Victor's men forced them through the Thompson family's backyard toward a black SUV parked in the alley behind the estate. Police sirens were getting closer, their red and blue lights already visible through the trees. "Move faster," Victor hissed, his professional composure cracking under the pressure of the approaching law enforcement. Emma was walking between Marcus and Catherine, her small hand gripping Marcus's fingers with surprising strength. Despite everything she'd endured, she wasn't crying. Instead, she was studying their surroundings with the intense focus of someone planning their next move. "Victor," one of his men called from ahead. "Police have the front and east side blocked. We need to go through Riverside Park to reach the extraction point." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Riverside Park was where this had all started 12 hours ago, where he'd first met Emma. If they could somehow signal the police or find a way to escape in familiar territory. But Victor was already adapting to the changing situation. "Fine, but we move fast and quiet. If the police get close enough to identify us, we eliminate the witnesses and disappear." Catherine stumbled slightly, and Jake immediately moved to support his mother. At 8 years old, he was showing remarkable resilience, staying calm and quiet despite the terror of their situation. "Jake's being very brave," Emma whispered to Marcus, "just like his daddy." Marcus felt his chest tighten. This little girl was offering comfort to his family even while facing her own death. The strength she'd developed just to survive was being used to help others, not just herself. As they reached the park, Victor pulled out night vision goggles and scanned the area. The same playground where Emma had been crying alone that morning was now empty. The swings moving gently in the breeze, like ghosts of happier times. "There," Victor pointed toward a cluster of trees near the pond. "We wait until the extraction team arrives." But as they moved deeper into the park, Emma suddenly stopped walking. "I can't go there," she said quietly. "Move!" one of Victor's men ordered, prodding her forward. "I can't," Emma repeated, and Marcus could hear genuine distress in her voice. "That's where I saw Mommy get hurt." Victor studied her with renewed interest. "The accident wasn't near here. Your mother died on the Upper West Side." "Not the car accident," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The first time, 2 weeks before she died." "That's where you hurt her to make her tell you about the formula." Marcus felt ice in his veins as he realized what Emma was saying. Victor had tortured Elena Vasquez in this very park, probably in those same trees where he was planning to wait with them now. "Clever child," Victor said with grudging admiration. "You were watching from the playground that night, weren't you?" Emma nodded. "Mommy told me to run home if she wasn't back in 20 minutes, but I couldn't leave her, so I hid and watched." "And what did you see?" Victor asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I saw you hurt her until she told you about Dr. Chen. That's how you knew to look for her at Columbia Medical Center. But Mommy lied about how much she told Dr. Chen because she knew you'd kill her anyway." Marcus realized that Emma's perfect memory had made her witness to her own mother's torture. The psychological trauma of carrying those memories would have destroyed most adults. Yet this 6-year-old girl was using the information strategically to stay alive. "Your mother was very stubborn," Victor said. "She could have avoided considerable pain by cooperating immediately." "She was protecting me," Emma said fiercely, "and she was protecting everyone else who might get hurt if bad people had her medicine." "Her medicine?" Victor laughed. "Child, do you have any idea what your mother's research could accomplish? Memory transfer could eliminate mental illness, cure learning disabilities, even download knowledge directly into the human brain. It's the next step in human evolution. It's also the perfect weapon, Marcus said grimly. You could steal memories, implant false ones, completely control someone's mind. Exactly, Victor agreed, which is why my employers are willing to pay $50 billion for the complete formula. Emma looked up at Marcus with those remarkable green eyes. That's why Mommy taught me the destabilization sequence. She said some things are too dangerous to exist, even if they could help people. The what? Victor's voice had gone sharp with concern. Marcus realized that Emma's earlier mention of a destabilization sequence hadn't been a lie. It was real, and Victor was just now understanding the implications. If I get too scared, or if I think the wrong people have the formula, I can scramble it in my memory, Emma explained with calm precision. Mommy taught me how to jumble all the numbers and letters so they don't make sense anymore. Victor grabbed Emma's shoulders, his composure finally cracking completely. You wouldn't dare. You'd destroy your mother's life work. I'd protect it, Emma corrected. Just like she did. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance interrupted their confrontation. Victor's extraction team was arriving, but so were police helicopters, with searchlights beginning to sweep the park. Decision time, Victor said grimly. Tell me the formula now, or watch your new family die one by one until you change your mind. But Emma had been counting on this moment. Okay, she said quietly. I'll tell you, but I need to write it down. The numbers are really long and complicated. Victor studied her suspiciously, then pulled out a notebook and pen. No tricks. Emma took the pen and began writing with the careful precision of a child who had been taught perfect penmanship. But Marcus, watching over her shoulder, realized she wasn't writing chemical formulas. She was writing a message. Police, Viktor Kozlov killed my mother. Russian mafia, $50 billion memory transfer technology. Help. Victor was focused on the approaching helicopters, calculating escape routes and timing. He didn't realize that Emma was documenting everything they needed to know to bring down his entire operation. There, Emma said, finishing the formula and handing him the notebook. That's everything Mommy taught me. Victor took the notebook eagerly, scanning the pages in the dim moonlight. It would take him several minutes to realize that what she'd given him was evidence that could destroy him, not the scientific breakthrough he'd killed for. Several minutes they didn't have, as police searchlights finally found them among the trees. Freeze! Drop your weapons! Victor's face contorted with rage as he realized Emma had outsmarted him one final time. But as he raised his gun toward her, Marcus threw himself forward with the desperate strength of a father protecting his child. The gunshot echoed across the park, but this time it was Victor who fell. The police tactical team swarmed their position within seconds of Victor hitting the ground. Marcus found himself on his knees in the grass. Emma clutched against his chest, both of them covered in blood that he hoped wasn't theirs. Medical team to the pond area, someone shouted. We have multiple casualties. Catherine was beside them instantly, checking Jake and Emma for injuries, while paramedics attended to David, who had somehow remained conscious throughout their entire ordeal. The security chief was pale from blood loss, but still alert enough to give orders. The notebook... David gasped to the nearest police officer. The little girl. She wrote down everything. Viktor Kozlov. Russian organized crime. $50 billion pharmaceutical theft. Detective Maria Santos, a 20-year NYPD veteran, knelt beside Emma with the kind of gentle authority that only comes from years of working with traumatized children. Hi. Sweetheart, she said softly. I'm Detective Santos. Are you hurt? Emma shook her head, then looked up at Marcus. Is Victor dead? Yes, Marcus said quietly. He can't hurt you anymore. But even as he said the words, Marcus knew that Victor had been just one part of a much larger operation. Somewhere out there were the employers who had ordered Elena Vasquez's murder, the people willing to pay $50 billion for memory transfer technology. "Emma," Detective Santos said gently, "we found that notebook you wrote in. That was very smart thinking, but I need to ask you some questions about your mommy and the people who hurt her." "I remember everything," Emma said simply. "I can tell you exactly what happened." Over the next hour, as crime scene technicians processed the area and paramedics treated their injuries, Emma provided the most detailed witness account Detective Santos had ever heard. Names, dates, locations, conversations, all delivered with the precise clarity of perfect recall. "She mentioned other companies," Detective Santos told Marcus as they watched Emma give her statement. "Apparently, Victor wasn't the only one hunting for Dr. Vasquez's research. There's been a shadow war in the pharmaceutical industry for months." Marcus felt a chill of realization. Emma's still in danger. "We know. That's why we're placing all of you in protective custody until we can round up the rest of Victor's network." But Emma had been listening to their conversation with that intense focus she applied to everything. "Detective Santos, what about Dr. Chen? Victor's people were going to hurt her too." Detective Santos spoke quickly into her radio, then turned back to Emma. "Dr. Chen is safe. We have officers with her at Columbia Medical Center. But Emma, I need to ask you something important. Is the formula real? Do you really have your mother's research memorized?" Emma looked at Marcus, then at Catherine and Jake, as if making sure her new family was ready for whatever came next. Finally, she nodded. "Every molecule," she said quietly. "Mummy spent 6 months teaching it to me, a little bit each night before bed. She said it was like a bedtime story, but with numbers instead of princesses." "And can you really destroy it in your memory?" Detective Santos asked. "I don't know," Emma admitted. "Mummy taught me the destabilization sequence, but I've never tried it. She said once it was gone, it would be gone forever, and maybe that would be for the best." Marcus realized the weight of the decision facing this 6-year-old girl. She held in her mind a scientific breakthrough that could revolutionize medicine and help millions of people. But she also held a weapon that could be used to control and manipulate human consciousness. "What do you want to do, Emma?" he asked gently. Emma was quiet for a long time, watching the police officers and paramedics work around them. Finally, she said, "I want to ask Dr. Chen what Mommy would have wanted. She was Mommy's friend. She'll know." Detective Santos nodded. "We can arrange that. But Emma, until we're sure it's safe, you'll need to stay somewhere secure." "She'll stay with us," Marcus said firmly. "Emma is part of our family now." Catherine reached over and took Emma's small hand. "Always," she agreed. Jake, who'd been unusually quiet throughout the ordeal, suddenly spoke up. "Emma, when we get home, can you teach me the memory thing? Not the dangerous stuff, just how to remember things better for school." Emma smiled, the first genuine, happy smile Marcus had seen from her. "I'd like that. But Jake, you're already smart enough just being yourself." As they were finally escorted away from the park, where everything had started, Marcus realized that his life had been permanently changed, not just by the violence and danger they'd survived, but by the remarkable little girl who had shown more courage and wisdom than most adults ever would. But he also knew that Emma's story was far from over. Somewhere in the shadows, other people were still hunting for the secrets locked in her perfect memory. The question was whether those secrets would ultimately save lives or destroy them. That decision, incredibly, might come down to the judgment of a 6-year-old girl who had already seen too much of the world's darkness, but somehow still believed in its capacity for good. Looking at Emma's small hand in Catherine's, Marcus made a silent promise. Whatever came next, whatever powerful forces might still be arrayed against them, he would protect this child who'd already protected so much. even if it cost him everything he'd built. Emma Thompson, and yes, she would be a Thompson now, would have the chance to grow up safely and decide for herself what to do with the incredible gift and terrible burden her mother had left her. But first, they had to survive long enough to get home. 3 weeks later, Emma sat in Dr. Sarah Chen's office at Columbia Medical Center, her small legs swinging from the adult-sized chair. The neurologist, who had been her mother's friend and colleague, was studying her with a mixture of scientific fascination and deep concern. "Your mother was very specific about what she wanted," Dr. Chen said gently. "She knew that someone might try to steal her research, so she came to me with a plan." Marcus and Catherine flanked Emma's chair, while Jake sat nearby, drawing pictures of their now expanded family. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of FBI interviews, media attention, and legal proceedings as the full scope of the pharmaceutical espionage ring came to light. "What kind of plan?" Emma asked. Dr. Chen pulled out a sealed envelope with Elena Vasquez's handwriting on it. "She wanted me to give this to you when you were old enough to understand the choice you'd have to make. But circumstances have forced us to have this conversation much sooner than she intended." Emma took the envelope carefully, as if it might break. Inside was a letter written in her mother's familiar handwriting, along with what looked like scientific diagrams. "Can you read it to me?" Emma asked. "Some of the words are still too big." Dr. Chen smiled sadly and took the letter. "My dearest Emma," she began, "if you are reading this, it means that something has happened to me, and you are facing a decision that no child should ever have to make. The formula I taught you could help millions of people who suffer from memory loss, brain injuries, and learning disabilities. It could eliminate Alzheimer's disease, help stroke victims recover, and even enhance human intelligence." Emma listened with the same intense focus she applied to everything, storing every word in her perfect memory. "But," Dr. Chen continued, "I have also seen how this technology could be misused, in the wrong hands. It could be used to steal memories, implant false ones, or control people's minds completely. After months of thinking about this, I believe the risk is too great." Marcus felt his chest tighten as he realized what Elena Vasquez was asking of her daughter. "If you are reading this letter, Emma, it means you have survived long enough to make your own choice. You can share the formula with Dr. Chen and other good scientists who will use it to help people, or you can use the destabilization sequence I taught you to destroy it forever." Emma looked up at Dr. Chen. "What do you think I should do?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Emma, your mother was one of the smartest people I ever knew, but she was also afraid. The pharmaceutical industry can be ruthless, and she saw how greed corrupted even well-intentioned research. But you work with medicines too," Emma pointed out with 6-year-old logic. "Are you bad?" "I try not to be," Dr. Chen said with a smile. "But Emma, there's something else you should know. Your mother didn't just teach you the formula, she modified it." "Modified it how?" Marcus asked. "The version Emma knows is incomplete. It's missing a crucial stabilization compound that prevents the memory transfer from causing permanent brain damage. Without that compound, anyone who tried to use Emma's version of the formula would likely suffer severe neurological trauma or death." Emma's eyes widened. "Mommy gave me a fake formula." "Not fake," Dr. Chen corrected. "Incomplete. She wanted to protect you, but she also wanted to make sure that even if someone forced you to reveal what you knew, they couldn't actually use it to hurt people." Marcus realized the genius of Elena Vasquez's final gambit. She had given her daughter the appearance of valuable knowledge while actually making her worthless to anyone who would abuse that knowledge. "But that means Victor and all those other people, they died for nothing," Emma said quietly. "They died because they chose greed over human decency," Catherine said firmly. That's not your fault, sweetheart. Dr. Chen leaned forward in her chair. Emma, there's one more thing. Your mother gave me the complete formula, including the stabilization compound. She wanted you to have the choice of whether to continue her work or end it. But she didn't want that choice to depend on what you had memorized. Emma was quiet for several minutes, processing information with the methodical thoroughness that had kept her alive on the streets. Finally, she looked up at Marcus. "What would you do?" she asked. Marcus felt the weight of the question. A 6-year-old girl was asking him to help decide the fate of potentially the most important medical breakthrough in human history. "I think," he said carefully, "that your mother was very wise. She found a way to make sure the choice was yours, not something forced on you by fear or greed." Emma nodded slowly, then looked at Dr. Chen. "If we kept working on Mommy's medicine, could we make rules about how it gets used, like only for people who are really sick and need help?" "We could try," Dr. Chen said. "There are ways to structure research and development to prioritize medical applications over commercial ones. It wouldn't be easy, but it's possible. And if I use the destabilization thing to erase what I remember, then your mother's research dies with your memories of it. The world loses a potential cure for millions of people, but it also loses a potential weapon for controlling minds." Emma was swinging her legs again, a sign that she was thinking hard. Finally, she said, "I want to help sick people like Mommy did, but I don't want bad people to have her medicine. What if," Marcus suggested, "we started very slowly? What if Dr. Chen worked with other good doctors to test the medicine on just a few people first, to make sure it's safe?" Emma brightened at this suggestion. "Like a trial run." Exactly like a trial run," Dr. Chen agreed. "We could start with patients who have severe memory loss from accidents or illness, people who might not survive without some kind of intervention. And if bad people try to steal it again, then we stop," Marcus said firmly. "Emma, you would always have the destabilization sequence as a fail-safe. The choice would always be yours." Emma nodded decisively. "Okay, let's try to help people, but if it gets scary again, I'll make it all go away." Dr. Chen smiled and reached across her desk to shake Emma's small hand. "Partners?" "Partners," Emma agreed solemnly. As they left the medical center that afternoon, Marcus realized that Emma had just made a decision that could affect the course of human history. But more importantly, she had made it with wisdom, compassion, and courage that most adults never developed. Walking through the same park where they'd first met, watching Emma and Jake chase fallen leaves while Catherine smiled beside him, Marcus understood that his family had been forever changed by the little girl who remembered everything. But perhaps that was exactly what all of them had needed. A reminder that the most important memories weren't stored in the mind, but in the heart. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the observation room of the Thompson Medical Research Institute, watching through reinforced glass as Dr. Chen prepared to administer the first authorized dose of what the scientific community now called the Vasquez Protocol. The patient was Maria Rodriguez, not their housekeeper, but a different Maria, a 34-year-old teacher who had lost most of her memories in a car accident 6 months earlier. She had volunteered for the experimental treatment after traditional therapies had failed to restore her ability to form new memories or access old ones. "Are you nervous?" Catherine asked, joining Marcus at the observation window. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, but also hopeful. Behind them, Emma sat at a child-sized desk, working on what looked like homework, but was actually her contribution to the research protocol. Her perfect memory had allowed her to work with Dr. Chen and a team of carefully vetted neurologists to refine her mother's original formula, making it safer and more targeted. "How's our little scientist doing?" Catherine asked, ruffling Emma's hair. "I'm not little anymore," Emma protested with 7-year-old dignity. "I'm Dr. Emma now." She wasn't wrong. In the year since Victor's death and the exposure of the pharmaceutical espionage ring, Emma had been working with some of the world's leading neurologists and biochemists. Her combination of perfect recall and intuitive understanding of her mother's work had accelerated research that might have taken decades to complete. "Dr. Emma," Marcus said with mock seriousness, "what's your assessment of today's procedure?" Emma looked up from her papers with the focused expression she wore when discussing her mother's work. "Patient has good brain chemistry for memory integration. Dr. Chen modified the dosage based on her neural scan patterns. Probability of successful memory restoration is 73.6%. "How can you be so precise?" Dr. Chen asked. Entering the observation room, I ran the calculations based on all the successful lab trials and Mom's original notes about dosage variables, Emma explained matter-of-factly. Marcus still marveled at how Emma could shift seamlessly between being a normal 7-year-old complaining about homework and being a research partner who could perform complex calculations in her head. "Speaking of calculations," Dr. Chen said, "the FDA Review Board wants to meet with you next month, Emma. They're impressed by the safety protocols you've developed." Emma nodded seriously. "I told them I won't approve any new patients unless they meet the safety criteria. Mommy always said the most important thing is, first, do no harm." Through the observation window, they watched as Maria Rodriguez opened her eyes and smiled with recognition at her husband, who had been waiting by her bedside for 6 months. "I remember," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I remember our wedding day. I remember our daughter's first steps. I remember everything." Dr. Chen's eyes filled with tears as she turned to Emma. "Your mother would be so proud of you." Emma nodded solemnly, then broke into the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen from her. "We did it, didn't we? We helped someone." "You did more than that," Marcus said, kneeling down to her level. "You proved that even the most dangerous knowledge can be used for good when it's in the right hands." As they celebrated Maria Rodriguez's successful treatment, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A chance encounter in Central Park had led to a little girl joining their family, surviving assassination attempts and ultimately choosing to use her extraordinary gift to heal rather than destroy. Emma Thompson, for she had officially become a Thompson 6 months ago, had shown the world that sometimes the most important decisions were made not by powerful adults, but by children who still believed that doing the right thing mattered more than personal gain. Looking at his expanded family, Catherine, Jake, and Emma, Marcus realized that the little girl who remembered everything had taught them all the most important lesson of all, that love, courage, and compassion were the only memories that truly mattered. The Vasquez Protocol would go on to help thousands of patients recover from traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's disease, and memory disorders. But for Marcus, the greatest miracle wasn't the medicine itself. It was the remarkable little girl who had chosen to share her mother's gift with the world, despite everything she had suffered. Emma had kept her promise to her mother, protected the research from those who would abuse it, and found a way to help people while staying true to her own moral compass. At 7 years old, she had accomplished what most adults could never achieve. She had changed the world for the better. And every night, as Marcus tucked her into bed in her pink bedroom with the flower-printed pajamas, Emma would smile and say the same thing. "I think Mommy would be happy with what we did today," Marcus always agreed. Because he knew that somewhere Dr. Elena Vasquez was indeed proud of the extraordinary daughter who had inherited not just her brilliant mind, but her generous heart.